What's up, guys? Welcome back to Greetings from Florida. I am your host, Joe Turino, and we are finally back. It has been such a long time, and I just want to thank you very much for being back here with me, everyone who's returning to the show. It's been way too long. The last episode I recorded was back in October of 2022. So to have you back here listening to me after all this time, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And I really appreciate the people who were continuing to share the show, because I've actually had people coming up to me after saying that, hey, I just checked out the show and it's great. So-and-so recommended. So thank you so much. I really appreciate that. And if this is your first episode, if you're a brand new listener, welcome. My name's Joe, and I'm here to share the stories behind some of the weird history and strange legends from all over the state of Florida. A lot of these stories are very, very true. Some of them are very, very sad. Some of them are very, very fucked up. And other stories are complete bullshit. But they are all fun stories to tell. And I'm glad that you're here joining us on this journey. And when you're finished with this episode, if you could do me a favor and go and subscribe or click the follow button if you're listening on Spotify, and please rate the show, leave a little review if you can, if it gives you that option, because it helps me out, helps me know that I'm doing okay on this thing, and helps other people find the show. So that would be very much appreciated if you could do that for me. As far as news, it's been damn near 8 months since I've been back. So news, I've been doing a lot of stuff, continuing to research, continuing to ghost hunt with War Party Paranormal, my team down here in South Florida, going on adventures, doing stuff with my beautiful wife and our Labradoodle Maggie May. So, you know, I missed this part of it. I missed sharing all these stories. So I decided I need to get back to it as soon as possible. So thanks again for tuning in. Our Instagram page is back up, where I plan on releasing photos to go along with each episode. You can find the links to our Instagram page as well as links to every episode by visiting the all-new redesigned www.florirdapod.com. We have a full-fledged website now, and I'm releasing it with this episode. It is going live with this episode release. So if you need to find somewhere to listen to the show, I know Stitcher is no longer available. Go check out the website, and I have links to every platform that this show is on right now. In the future, I'm also going to be opening up the Florida blog, where I'm going to be sharing smaller stories, additional stories that, won't make a full episode, but still deserve to be told because they're fun, they're interesting, they shows a little bit of that wonderful Florida character that we got. So that's one of the things. I also want to use that as a way to spread awareness with some of our historic landmarks that are having trouble finding funding, and use that as a way to share a little bit about these places, and give you the links on how to reach out to these places and make any donations, any petitions to save some of these landmarks. I want to be able to put all that there. So stay tuned for all that. And besides that, very soon I'll be opening up the merch store. So we'll have, some t-shirts and cups and stickers and little things like that. And, if you choose to, it'd be great. If you pick up a little something, it helps support the show. It helps show that I'm not just talking to myself, every couple weeks on this thing. So check out the new website, www.florirdapod.com, because we got some cool stuff coming up soon. All right, now that we've got that out of the way, what do you say we get started with today's story? And as this is my first episode back in a while, I decided that we should have a little fun. And what's more fun than spending a day at the carnival? Now, I don't know about you, but man, when I was a kid, I really loved our school carnival. I went to a Catholic school when I was growing up, and our church hosted a carnival for the community every year. And as students, we would have to do fundraisers every year, like selling those world's finest chocolate bars or selling raffle tickets. And as a reward, they would give us a day where we would be let out of class early, and we could spend the rest of the afternoon at the carnival with all of our buddies. We would typically skip lunch on this day because we knew that in a couple hours we'd be out munching on some delicious buttery popcorn or fresh corn on the cob and sweet caramel apples, funnel cake, cotton candy, all the greatest hits when it comes to carnival food. And because our school was smack dab in the middle of Hialeah, Florida, we had a bunch of vendors that would sell Cuban sandwiches, croquettes, empanadas. Hell, you would get a plate of roasted pork, white rice, and black beans with yuca and mojo if you really wanted it. I'm telling you, this is right in the middle of Hialeah, Florida. A huge Cuban population, Hispanic population. So, you would eat, and then once you were done stuffing your face, it was time to head out to the field where you would jump on some of the classic rides like the Ring of Fire, the Tilt-A-Whirl, and the Zipper. Remember the Zipper? It's the one that has the little cage, and they would trap you, and the thing would go up and spin around, and then the cage itself would spin around, and you would hope that you would not puke all over yourself in front of all your friends when you were riding that thing. And then you would, jam to some like 90s hip hop on the Gravitron or the Himalaya as you were like fighting against the G's, like trying to stand up and reposition, or if you were on the Gravitron, go upside down, things like that. You would race your friends through like the fun house, or you would knock the shit out of each other in the bumper cars. And, if you were really lucky, maybe you would take a slow ride on the Ferris wheel with your crush. So why am I talking about carnivals? Well, because without the traveling carnivals of the 1920s and 30s, we wouldn't have the Florida town that today's story is centered around, as well as the extraordinary people that called it home. Located just 10 miles south of Tampa, Florida on Highway 41, Gibsonton, or Gibtown as it was referred to by the locals, is a home to an amazing history of showmen dating back to the 1920s. Shortly after the first settlers arrived, Gibsonton became a winter home and later a retirement destination for renowned sideshow freaks, showmen, and just about anybody that worked or ran a traveling carnival or circus. It was made clear right away that Gibsonton was going to be a home for those who didn't quite fit in anywhere else. Its first settlers, the giant and his wife, the half-woman, ran a campsite, a bake shop, and the fire department. The post office was the only one in the country that catered to little people, and it had extra low counters. And the local bar had custom-built chairs for the fat ladies and even for the tallest man. Siamese twin sisters ran a fruit stand, and there were 3 factories that manufactured Ferris wheels and carousels. It's also the only place in the United States with special zoning regulations allowing residents to keep and train exotic animals, store and repair amusement rides, and practice stunts during the off-season right on their property. It was not uncommon to walk down a street in Gibtown and see a few elephants or zebras on one side and then see performers practicing their high wire act on the other. It was truly the most inclusive of communities in the country in its own unique manner. It is believed that people with physical deformities and abnormalities have been treated as objects of interest and entertainment going back to at least the medieval period. During this time, crowds would flock from all over for a chance to see these living oddities perform. A famous early example was the exhibition at the court of King Charles I of Lazarus and Johannes Baptista Corrado, two conjoined brothers born in Genoa, Italy. While Lazarus appeared to be otherwise ordinary, the underdeveloped body of his brother dangled from his chest. When Lazarus was not exhibiting himself, he would cover his brother with his cloak to avoid any unnecessary attention. Now, the earliest carnivals were hosted by Italian Catholics in the 18th century. These carnivals, which drew their inspiration from earlier pagan festivals, were a way for the people of the time to get out all of their fun before the strict Lenten season. In fact, the word carnival can be traced back to the old Italian word carnelevare, which means taking away meat, which refers to the Catholic practice of abstaining from red meat for the 40 days before Easter. The tradition quickly spread to the French and the Spanish, and then to the Caribbean as Europeans invaded. In Trinidad and Tobago, throughout this century, two concurrent festivals took place. Fat Tuesday celebrations, which were organized by the European immigrants, were characterized by dinners, balls, concerts, and hunting parties. The other was called Canboulay, which was a parade of sorts created by freed slaves that reenacted the atrocities of slavery through music, chanting, and dancing. This festival is also where calypso music got its start. Over the years, the European and African traditions converged to form the basis of the modern Caribbean carnival. Many of the elements of these early carnivals still exist in carnivals of today. Colorful costumes with headdresses and feathers, dancing and music, and generally raucous behavior. Think Carnival in Brazil or Mardi Gras in New Orleans. The first documented traveling sideshow in American history was in 1738, in which a woman taken from West Africa was exhibited. An advertisement described her as 4 feet tall and having the body of a woman, but the face of an ape, clearly reflecting the extreme racism of the day. The first fair in the U.S. may have been the 1765 York Fair in York, Pennsylvania. Thomas Penn, son of Pennsylvania founder William Penn, granted the people of York a charter to hold a 2-day agricultural market on the town commons in order to recognize the city's growth and to celebrate the year. Almost 90 years later, in 1853, the York County Agricultural Society expanded the fair to 3 days, and a tract of land was purchased on which it would be held, thus creating the first ever fairgrounds in the U.S. In 1840, P.T. Barnum developed the American Museum in New York City, where visitors could pay a dime and see a variety of displays, many of which were fake historical items created from the imagination of Barnum. Unfortunately, this museum was also home to individuals whose physical differences were deemed worthy of exhibition. Visitors came to see people with dwarfism, albinism, and microcephaly, a condition where a baby was born with a head much smaller than expected. After 2 fires in 1865 and 1868, Barnum decided to take his show on the road and began a new American circus tradition. The freak show, as it became known, evolved into one of the most popular attractions at the circus. It featured people and animals who were born different, alongside performers who could do marvelous tricks like sword swallowing, fire breathing, or human pincushion acts. People of different ethnicities or different physical abilities were placed on display, and visitors would pay to see individuals without limbs or struggling with obesity. Giants and little people were displayed alongside conjoined twins or those with cognitive impairments. These performers were often viewed as objects of entertainment and amusement rather than human beings, and were fully exploited by their circus employers. Despite widespread exploitation and abuse, freak show performers often formed close relationships and found acceptance among other entertainers. And sometimes they even achieved celebrity status, which in turn meant large salaries. For example, General Tom Thumb, whose real name was Charles Stratton, was a performer with dwarfism in Barnum's traveling circus in the 1840s. He was presented to Queen Victoria and the royal family multiple times. After his wedding reception in 1863, Stratton and his wife were received by President Abraham Lincoln. Although Stratton's rise to fame was unusual, sideshow performers were often just as well known as actors or other mainstream entertainers of the time. The traveling carnival as we know it today did not emerge until the 1890s. The 1893 World's Columbian Exhibition in Chicago, also known as the Chicago World's Fair, captured the imagination of people throughout the country and the world, and is what paved the way for the American traveling carnival. According to the International Independent Showmen's Museum website, the 1893 Chicago World's Fair sold more than 25 million tickets and introduced the world to a nation not only conceived in liberty, but conceived in its own greatness, and eager to try just about anything as long as it was new, electrical, and enormous, or simply bizarre, and tapped into the imaginations both for the visitors and the inventors. One of the things this imagination brought was the world's first midway, the Midway Plaisance, which was a mile-long strip of parkway that featured mechanized rides, games of chance, and food vendors, which would set the precedent for the traveling carnivals that followed in the fair's wake. Perhaps the most popular attraction at the exhibition was novel uses of electricity, which was very new at the time. From the creation of the first movable sidewalk to the first all-electric kitchen, electricity sparked a bonfire of imagination amongst fairgoers. George W. Ferris, an engineer and bridge builder, proposed and constructed a huge observation wheel that carried 40 passengers in one of 36 cars 250 feet in the air for a view of the fairgrounds and surrounding area. The Ferris wheel, as it would come to be known, was the first of its kind. Out on the Midway is where you would also find a variety of sideshows, usually categorized as one of four types of attractions: a museum show, a single O, a girl show, or a 10-in-1. The single O consisted of a single attraction, typically something like Bonnie and Clyde's death car, or a giant rat, or another unusual animal, a what is it, which is some sort of convincing but artificial monstrosity like the Fiji mermaid, or a geek show. Now, the term geek show is often applied to a show where the performance consists of a horrific act that the crowd finds distasteful, but ultimately entertaining. For example, it usually consisted of a single performer, known as a geek, who would chase live chickens around the ring, and it ended with the geek biting off the chicken's head off and swallowing them whole. That's not bullshit. That's actually what the show was. You see, these geeks were typically alcoholics or drug addicts who were paid for their performances with liquor, especially during Prohibition, or with narcotics. And a great example of that can be found in the 1946 novel or 2021 film Nightmare Alley. You'll see a depiction of that in the early on in the movie, and then at the very end of what a geek show is. A museum show is a sideshow where exhibits are usually not alive. It might include tanks of piranhas or cages with unusual animals, stuffed freak animals like a two-headed goat or a calf, or other exotic items like weapons or cars allegedly used by famous murderers. Some of the exhibits might even be dummies or photographs of build attractions. The single O and museum shows usually operated as grind shows, meaning that patrons may enter at any time viewing the various exhibits at their leisure. A girl show, as you could already imagine by the name, was a show where women were the primary attraction. These shows could range from the review, featuring fully clothed performers, to the racier cooch or hoochie coochie show, which might play either partly clothed or strong, meaning nude. And basically, it was a traveling strip club. So imagine taking your family to the fair and, you buy some tickets and stick little Timmy on the little motorcycles that go around in a circle, and then the wife would go down and play some games with the daughter, and dad would be looking at some titties. So it's a good day for the whole family. That's entertainment that everyone can enjoy. Now, you would think that the lady show would be the big draw when it came to a carnival, traveling carnival or circus, but the big draw was actually the 10-in-1, which is got its name because it offered 10 acts for the price of one. The 10-in-1 usually consisted of a freak show exhibiting human oddities. This included both born freaks such as dwarfs, giants, or persons born with other deformities, and made freaks like tattooed people, fat people, or human skeletons, which were extremely thin men that were often married to the fat lady, creating a perfect 10. And that was a very bad joke, sorry. Now, some of the more well-known freaks in the early days included Fannie Mills, known as the Ohio Bigfoot Girl because she suffered from Milroy disease, which caused her legs and feet to become gigantic. Joseph Merrick, known as the Elephant Man, who originally was diagnosed with elephantitis, but that was later changed to Proteus syndrome, in which a person's bones, skin, tissues, and organs would enlarge erratically. And then there was also conjoined twin sisters, Daisy and Violet Hilton, who grew in popularity during the 1920s and 30s for performing dance routines and playing instruments. For variety's sake, the acts in a 10-in-1 would also include working acts. These were acts that consisted of illusionists performing magic tricks or daredevil stunts like fire-eating, sword-swallowing, knife-throwing, body-piercing, lying on a bed of nails, walking up a ladder of sharp swords, and more. In addition, the freak show performers might also perform acts or stunts and would often sell souvenirs like giant's rings or pitch cards with their photos and life stories, basically freak trading cards. The 10-in-1 would often end in a blow-off, which was an extra act that wasn't advertised on the outside but could be viewed for an additional fee. The blow-off act would often be described provocatively by the barker, the guy who's like, step right up, come inside and look at all my shit. Often as something deemed too strong for women and children, such as pickled punks. And what exactly are pickled punks, you ask? Well, I'm going to tell you. Pickled punks is the carny term used to describe babies, that's human babies, that were preserved in jars of preservatives, usually formaldehyde. Most of them had some sort of anatomical abnormality, like being conjoined twins or having polycephaly, which is a condition where the baby is born with two heads. A lot of these 10-in-1s traveled with quite a collection of them. But don't worry, some of these little guys were fakes. But some of them were very, very real. And you want to know how they would tell the real pickled punks from the fakes? The fake ones bounced when they were dropped on the floor. Yeah, these were known as bouncers, and I couldn't make this up if I tried. I couldn't find it in my research, but I'm guessing these guys were dropped pretty regularly, and that is part of the act in order to freak people out. I mean, how else would you know that the real punks didn't bounce? So the varied spectacles of the Midway Pleasance were heavily covered by media outlets throughout the country, drawing the eyes of Americans who in turn desired to see more of these spectacles in person. So following the World's Fair closure in October 1893, traveling shows and carnival companies began popping up throughout the United States, latching to the popularity of the Chicago World's Fair Midway Pleasance and hoping to deliver electrified entertainment to communities throughout America by literally bringing the show to them. Some of the first post-Chicago World's Fair traveling carnivals and shows grew directly out of the Chicago area. For instance, Otto Schmidt, who worked as a showman at the fair, founded the Chicago Midway Amusement Company following the Columbian Exposition. His traveling show, which toured the northeastern United States, was comprised of 13 different acts, including some that performed at the World's Fair. Unfortunately for Otto, his company closed due to poor business practices before completing his first tour. But after Otto Schmidt's company closed, some members of his company actually formed their own successful traveling carnivals. From 1902 to 1936, the number of traveling carnivals in the United States increased from 17 to over 300. Traveling carnivals, especially in the early days, were considered nomadic groups as they were constantly moving around the country, usually operating during certain seasons. They would typically operate in the northern regions during the warmer spring and summer months, and then move down to warmer southern areas during the fall, and then take the winter off in order to schedule for the next year's season, as well as take time to buy, sell, or make any necessary repairs to rides and attractions, or even create new or work on existing acts. And unfortunately, due to the type of acts featured, along with the occasional dishonest business practice, traveling carnivals were often looked down upon. This meant that unless they were in a particular city or area for that week's contract, locals really didn't want, quote unquote, those people sticking around for very long. It wasn't until a couple of carnival concession workers happened upon a small fishing village just outside of Tampa, Florida, while on a road trip during the off-season, that these folks would find a permanent place that they would call home. Gibsonton was founded by James Gibson Sr. from Greenville, Alabama in 1884, when he homesteaded 150 acres at the mouth of the Alafia River, stretching to the east for approximately a half mile along the south bank of the river. Other families settled on the north and south sides of the Alafia, some coming from various regions of the United States, while others came from as far as England, France, and Germany. James Gibson, along with Granville Platt and F.L. Henderson, became trustees of a school erected in 1888. Shortly after the birth of the 20th century, the Gibsonton area underwent a tremendous change. Other small villages began to spring up in the surrounding areas starting in 1907, when T.M. Weir had the Gardenville town site surveyed. And just 3 years later, W.D. Davis filed the plat for the Florida Garden Lands, which was the rural complement to his more suburban Garden City subdivision. In 1910, Earl Lincoln Adams and Rosie Manners Adams bought land in the southern part of the Florida Garden Lands and raised 10 children on their homestead. This section of Mr. Davis's development became known as Adamsville in honor of these early prospectors. Preceding the Florida land boom by a decade before shadowing its promotional hype, Mr. Davis reprinted letters from happy property buyers who touted the advantages of living in his development in a 1911 Garden City promotional brochure. One of these letters, written by a Mrs. C.A. Henderson and printed in the brochure, reads, I, by merest accident, found a modest advertisement in Everybody's Magazine of February. I immediately corresponded with the owner, not agent, of the lands. I was favorably impressed, and there was no impossible statements made, but the temporary drawbacks shown as well as the results, if one goes at it with energy and enthusiasm. My first visit out to the lands was one of delight and satisfaction, and I purchased 3 lots, had one cleared, and a small cottage built, ready for our family to go the coming fall. On the lands can be raised all kinds of vegetables, oranges, and grapefruit. I visited a large grove adjoining these lands that was a marvel to me. I was informed the season's crop had netted the owner over $8,000 on the trees. Fish and oysters just a quarter-mile from my house. Who could wish for anything better? A few inconveniences will be experienced for a year or two, for it is like any new country. But the air we breathe there from the beautiful Hillsborough Bay is so life-giving that the few inconveniences seem nothing. I believe all settling at Garden City will soon decide they have found the fountain of youth. I remained here for 10 days, and all I met were delighted with the climate, and the soils were good, and they were making themselves homes. Just one item for the young ladies. I met several charming young bachelors that I know would make ideal husbands in this ideal climate. Ooh, I'm all hot and bothered now. I'm sorry, I couldn't stop. All right. Prices in the area ranged from $50 a lot to $600 for a single bayfront lot. On any lot less than $125, the purchaser was only required to put down $5 in cash and paid $3 per month. Lots consisting more than $125 required $10 down, and the remainder was paid off in $5 increments. With such promotions, the entire area prospered, and by 1918, Gardensville's population reached 125. Not wanting to miss out on the action, James Gibson founded Gibsonton on the Bay in 1923. Directly across the Alafia River, U.S. Phosphoric Products Company built a phosphate plant in 1924, which benefited the locals by providing employment opportunities. And once roads were built, new visitors began arriving in the area. These new visitors included Grace and Eddie LeMay, a couple who ran one of the best carnival cookhouse concessions at the time. The LeMays visited the area in 1924 while driving from Tampa to Miami. Their original plan was to stop and take a break from the road for about an hour or so after they found a spot along the banks of the Alafia River big enough for their trailer, and they pulled over. And since they were next to the river, Eddie decided it was as good a time as ever to do a little fishing. So he cast out a line, and before he knew it, Eddie had caught enough fish for he and Grace's dinner that night. A short time later, a group of curious Gibsonton locals approached the trailer, and the LeMays figured that this meant it was time for them to move on. But to their surprise, the locals greeted the couple and welcomed them to their little slice of heaven on earth. The LeMays enjoyed their time with these friendly folks so much that they ended up staying the night for the first time. Once their vacation ended, they went back to work operating cookhouses on the carnival midways. But as soon as the season was over, the couple continued to return to their favorite place year after year. And finally, after a 30-year career on the road, the LeMays decided to permanently settle in Gibsonton. In December 1929, they built Eddie's Hut, a general store, bar, and restaurant, which served as the first retail establishment in town and operated for many years. Their home was only the 5th built in Gibsonton at the time. Now, the LeMays may have been the first show people to settle in this tiny town, but they certainly weren't the last. Eddie and Grace urged their fellow carnival workers to join them. As carnival folks spent more than half a year on the road and were strangers in every other town they passed through, many of the carnival workers, including a large number of sideshow performers, answered this invitation. Soon the word spread on this new welcoming winter home for traveling show people. Al and Bernice Jeannie Tomani were one such couple. Aurelio Al Tomani, known professionally as the Giant, was billed at 8 feet 4.5 inches. His wife Jeannie, who was born with no legs, only measured a mere 30 inches tall and once performed as a carnival acrobat and billed herself as the half lady. Together they were known as the world's strangest married couple. Shortly after meeting and falling in love in 1936, the Tomanis traveled to Tampa to visit friends and ventured into Gibsonton. They immediately fell in love with the small town and returned for the next 4 winters for a little fishing and camping. In 1941, the Tomanis decided to buy property in Gibsonton. They found a 3.5-acre site with a couple of old buildings on the south side of the Alafia and began to convert it into a fishing camp consisting of a restaurant, a bait house, 15 wooded cottages, 12 mobile homes, a picnic area, and boat slips. The couple continued working the carnival circuit during the summer and would fix up the camp during the winter months. But once their daughter Judy was born, the Tomani family moved to Gibsonton permanently. Named after Mr. Tomani, the Giants fishing camp quickly became a local landmark. Besides the fishing camp, Al owned and operated a TV repair shop and a tourist trailer court. He also served as the town fire chief. He donated the town's first ambulance and helped build the community hall and served as the president of the town's Chamber of Commerce. Another carnival performer that made a home in Gibsonton was Colonel Casper Belson. As a little person, Belson stood 36 inches tall and considered Al to be one of his best friends. He served as Gibsonton's police chief and entire police force from 1949 until the early 1960s, and even ran for the title of honorary mayor in 1964. Another show couple that called Gibsonton home were Priscilla Roman, the monkey girl who was born with hypertrichosis, a condition in which dark hair covers the body and face, gums are enlarged, and in Priscilla's case, 2 sets of teeth appear, as well as her husband Emmett Behano, the alligator-skinned man, whose condition, called ichthyosis, created a covering of thick, scaly skin all over his body. The two met in the late 1930s, fell in love, eloped, and married in 1938. They eventually made their way to Gibsonton and purchased an acre of land and a mobile home sometime in the 1950s, where they lived for the rest of their lives, even though they didn't retire from show business until the late 80s, early 90s. There was Betty Lou Williams, who had her baby sister growing out of her abdomen, and Melvin Burkhardt, the human blockhead, who could hammer metal spikes up his nose. CeeLo the Seal Man, the Ossified Lady, Little Dick Larry, Mule-Faced Grace McDaniels, Aunt Dottie the Fat Lady. Okay, maybe not Little Dick Larry, but the rest of these remarkable human oddities called Gibsonton home when they were not traveling with the carnival. And by 1967, about 100 freaky folk and about 1,000 carnies lived there. 1967 was also the year that a lifelong showman by the name of Ward Hall arrived in Gibsonton looking to make a permanent home for himself among the people he related to and loved the most in his life, his beloved freaks. I mean, they didn't call Ward Hall the king of the sideshow for nothing. but we'll learn about his early life, his time on the carnival midways, and his time in Gibtown on the next episode of our series on the remarkable residents of Gibsonton. And that does it for this episode of Greetings from Florida. Thank you all for tuning in. Please remember to subscribe to the show wherever you listen to podcasts, and don't forget to rate and leave a review as it helps more people find the show. Please visit floweirdapod.com for show-related news and updates, as well as links to all episodes and socials, and coming soon, the Flowweirda blog and merch page. You can also contact us via the website or at our email floweirdapod@gmail.com if you have any questions about the show or if you have any topics that you want covered on a future episode. Thank you to Ernesto Paez and his band Modern Mimes for the awesome theme music to go with the show. Go visit their website, www.modernmimes.com, for links to where you can stream and purchase their music, as well as where to find the tour dates and ticket information, band merch, and links to their social. Go check out War Party Paranormal at warpartyparanormal.com for dates and ticket info to our upcoming public ghost hunting events, as well as team member bios, links to War Party Paranormal socials, the War Party Paranormal radio show, and where you can contact us if you or someone you know are experiencing paranormal occurrences in your own home or business and need some help. And go check out my buddies over at the Haunted Files on Paraflix, Paranormal Plus. It's featuring War Party Paranormal's Mike Del Coro and Eric Vangelan. If you're not a subscriber to Paraflix, you can use offer code TheHauntedFiles25 to save 25% off a new annual subscription. We'll be back soon with an all-new episode of Greetings from Florida. But until then, stay weird, Florida. We'll see you next time.